Welcome back, everyone, and I do mean welcome back, as our site's been down since Monday, and I guess we'll just say that it was inexplicable technical problems, or maybe we were too close to being over a target. Who knows? Jim, you there?
Sure am.
David?
I'm here, Bill.
All right, so we decided we're going to begin with something I talked about as far back as 2015. It looks like liquidity is drying up all over the world. And Jim, as you put it, we're about to have a spiritual experience globally. You want to start this one, Jim?
Well, it's what you said. The process of liquidity drying up. Really, when it comes down to the kahuna, the big one, that was the synthetic dollar short, or the only thing left holding the dollar up, dealt with settlement of international contracts, which were hedged. And the unwind has had a tremendous impact on the emerging markets. And the emerging market economies have a significant impact on, a drip up if you want, but all other economies and currencies. So what you predicted is in fact in place, affecting the currency market and affecting every aspect of business, but most especially every over-the-counter derivative that has ever been issued. So when we are saying it might be a spiritual experience, the sinew, the skeleton, that which holds the economy together underneath this camouflage of wild markets and $2,000 stocks is crumbling. Spiritual experience is going to come to central banks, who began through the Swiss central bank to invest in these very fancy stocks, the big four that led everything into the $1,000 mark. What have they done with it, and how are they going to feel about seeing an inventory loss of the size they're about to?
And ultimately, sovereign treasuries.
Yes,
because
only dollars with a coupon.
Well, this is happening. This is happening with sovereign treasury balance sheets more upside down than they've ever been in all of history. What I'm talking about is the liquidity, the lack of liquidity is occurring at the very same time there's more debt on any ratio or any basis, however you want to measure it, than there ever has been before. And Jim, you said the sinew or the skeleton, that's the bone of the system is debt. And we've gotten to the point where, and we've talked about this before, where debt is considered an asset. And with liquidity drying up, rates going higher, that underlying foundation, underlying asset, if you will, the debt, is shrinking. David, you got any comment on this?
Yeah, well, again, what you call it is a global dollar shortage. It's here, and it's a big problem. At this particular point in time, you're starting to see cracks in the system, and that's going to bring us to what, we talked about last week, which is negative moat, where you're going to see one bad story feed on another bad story, feed on another bad story. And if you were to think about it, you have a poll out right now where America's assessment of the economy is the highest it has been since the dot-com bubble. Do you realize how backwards that means the average American has it? Because they are partying like it's 1999.
Exactly.
And in a lot of ways it is 1999, but more importantly, it's 1987. And when I say 1987, it was just the anniversary of the 87 rollover, I believe a day ago, 2 days ago.
Yesterday.
And have we learned anything other than the belief that the central bank has the markets back all the time?
Well, and that's the problem.
The problem is what's in the tool bag, okay?
Nothing. It's done.
Yep.
It's over.
And we do have that problem. So there you are, problem and no viable solution that's healthy.
Yeah, the only thing that can possibly be done is print money. And that's every central bank everywhere. And the problem with that is the sovereign treasuries have already gone through that cycle. They were the white knight that stepped up and created debt or put debt on their books. Now the sovereign treasuries themselves have reached debt saturation. Don't forget, 30 years ago, any sovereign treasury that reached 100% of debt to GDP, that was the gateway to Banana Republic land. And now you see it all over the place, everywhere.
It's so right, so history, and so purposely forgotten.
Well, it was erased from history by mainstream media. They just, they paper over it on a day-to-day basis, and it's only people like yourselves and, other alternative news sources who continue to try and bring common sense to the equation here.
There's a very real reason for that, David. And the reason simply is major Western sovereign treasuries have walked through that Banana Republic land gate. I mean, the U.S., we're now over 105% of debt to GDP. So
okay,
since we're there, it doesn't matter.
Can I stop you there?
Fire away.
That's 100% of GDP you're talking about, not counting the 21 trillion Dr. Mark Skidmore says is unaccounted for.
Exactly.
And
make it 210%.
That would make it 210%. And how does the government cover it up? By declaring the budget a national security so you can't really see how many checks have been written out of the checkbook.
Right. Many people have forgotten this, but if you go back to late 2008, I believe early 2009, they actually, I think it was an executive order, was passed that no, I forget how they called it. We'll call it a major bank. None of the major banks or brokers had to report major losses in the interest of national security. So the fact that we're completely broke, bankrupt, whatever you want to call it, that's a matter of national security, and you can't know it.
Well, you could know it, but they're just not going to admit it.
Yes.
Well, David, stepping back, if we could, I think the point that you just made about national security and secrecy and finance is something not generally understood by readers and by listeners. Could you take a moment on that and touch on the implications for the benefit of us all?
Well, why don't you run with it, because you're the pro.
Well, it's very simple. It's an admission that this has been going on in the statistics that we've been receiving for a very long time. It's an attempt to shut off the debt clock. But we have to make the assumption as a minimum that it will remain the same or go higher. And we'll make that assumption by comparison to previous periods. So in a sense, alternative media, which may be becoming real media, us, will be able to keep a finger or a thumb on what's going on, but most people either will care not to or won't have that ability. So now, if you're going to make data secret in its full content, why would you do that? because you're going to blow it up, not because you're going to blow it down. Because it is, as Bill said, such a clear and present danger that advertising it in its entirety would be self-destructive. What I think we're seeing is the tail end of globalism, which stood on MOPE, and as you said, we're now moving into something even more important, negative MOPE, at a time when something you said, Bill, is the foundational to all of this, and that is a contraction of debt compounded by an artificial dollar shortage. In one word, too complex for most people to figure out. In other words, more camouflage. And when it finally comes to fruition, which it's in the process of doing right now, it will be an event that will have never occurred before anywhere. Period. If that isn't a warning enough for our listeners to prepare themselves in the ways that we suggested, I don't know how to make one with more solid foundation and with a good indication of dimension. That's my answer.
Hey, guys, let me jump in just for a second. The more I thought about the concept of negative MOPE during this week,
yes,
you could substitute, instead of negative MOPE, you could just use the word truth. Because one event is going to cascade, one truth is going to cascade to another truth, to another truth, to another truth. That's the way I saw it or see it.
Well, I think that's absolutely correct.
But there's a multiplier effect. In other words, in MOPE, it's a lie. But because of media, political voices, markets, and all of the things that are being influenced by MOPE, you've had an accelerator effect. Okay?
Yep.
So what you've just said would be truth compounded or multiplied.
Like turning a light switch on.
Yeah.
And the light shines everywhere.
Yeah. And as it was on the upside geometric, it will be on the downside, like stepping into an elevator without a car. Okay.
Yes.
In other words, a little bit more than truth. Truth has a multiplier effect. MOPE has a multiplier effect. So negative MOPE is truth with a multiplier effect.
I'll go with that.
Well, the International Monetary Fund head is not known for breathlessness on the world stage, and yet the IMF sounded downright alarmist in its latest global financial stability report, stating that large challenges loom for the global economy to prevent a second Great Depression. Think about those words slowly.
Second grade. Isn't that greatest?
Yeah, how about the Greatest Depression?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. And, you know, these guys aren't stupid. They know what they're playing with.
And now they'll be able to say, we told you so.
And we have in office probably one of the world's greatest experts on bankruptcy. That's been the secret. That's been the art of the deal. When the Citicorp told Donald Trump that they were going to foreclose on his real estate holdings, he had already had prepared a balance sheet of Citicorp reflecting what it would look like if they foreclosed. And he handed it out to the executives he was talking with, and he said, not only are you not going to foreclose on me, I'm going to promptly receive a $100 million additional loan. And you know what they did? They gave a $100 million additional loan because they would have been flat broke.
And that's called inflate or die.
Exactly. So the idea that we're going into a hyperinflation is the tail end of globalism brought on by negative mope based on truth times orders of magnitude. I know it's a mouthful, but that's it.
Okay, we'll add to that headline under negative mope. European car sales plunged 23%. We talk about how the market was priced for perfection. That doesn't sound like perfection to me. Does it sound like perfection to you guys?
No, certainly not. And
covered with
camouflage.
You could also interchange the word Europe with Asia, because the same thing has happened there.
And don't forget the developing area. You know, I live very much in the developing world, and these guys get hit like bolts of lightning from that type of consideration. Globalism was wonderful when derivatives could propel it down the highway at breakneck speed, and then all of a sudden globalism ran into resistance. Now we've run into this, but it's going to be on a global basis thanks to what? The spider web of financial interconnection as a product of the experiment in globalism based on the desired idea of a one central bank world run really by the deep state, which, by the way, is everywhere. There's a deep state part of it. It's not just the United States. Deep state is everywhere to some degree. You know, when you become a trillionaire, you want to dominate the world. It was better off when a million was big or 100 million was immense. But I think a trillion probably, let's say there's 21 trillionaires, and there's probably more. I think that it will cause an instantaneous insanity. And the desire for world domination. And plans made by man do have a habit of screwing up, you know. Even the most famous is the most evil.
Because man-made plans generally go against Mother Nature.
Well, Mother Nature's a little angry when you say I've just come through a summer where it rained every single day. I'm in the Northeast, which is a rainforest now. Look at the hurricanes we've had. Look at the Pacific Rim volcano belt. Look at them popping off all over the place. Look at the Atlantic, was full of hurricanes like never before. Don't kick Mother Nature in the ass, or you're going to get hurt.
Or how about Central Texas? We just got about 3 to 4 months worth of rain in the last 7 days.
Well, you can't say that.
Swimming.
It's one of two things: either the experiments with controlling the weather went totally wild and bad, or Mother Nature is very angry, or the combination of the above two. And as anybody said we were wrong in the first one, we've been proved nothing but right as information has been declassified.
Well, along the negative mope line, let's move on. You know, so we're already aware of what's happening to car sales. You know, Mercedes announced this week that they're slashing forward guidance. Has anybody looked at their stock? It's down from 95 to 49. And we're supposedly in a recovery where everything is just beautiful and the economy's firing on all cylinders, and everybody in America thinks that it's 1999 and they're partying just like it. How is this possible?
I apologize because I'm trying to talk over everybody. My apologies, David. Let's, for our own selfish interest, hope the party continues through the midterm.
David, I would add, look at real estate stocks. Look at home builders. They're down 35-40%.
Yeah, look at the price of the house I'm in. No recovery here. No major recovery at all.
Well, no expansion.
I don't see any more. I see property, but I don't see any houses on.
But have you noticed since 2008, That's the only word you've ever heard is recovery. You've never heard the word expansion. And if you look at John Williams' numbers, we've not, in fact, look at industrial production. Industrial production is still not taking out the highs that were made in 2005, 2006. We're still 5% below those numbers. So it was never an expansion. It was always a recovery off the bottom.
It's been a magic show, guys, okay? We're living in a worldwide global magic show when it comes to markets. If there are such things left, and I don't think they are, let's call them financial global Nintendo games, but not markets.
Funded entirely by debt.
And if you'd like to go to see something that looks like a graveyard, you really need to look at how many people are on the New York Stock Exchange, because you can count it, okay? And you don't need too many hands.
Well, along the housing market lines, mortgage applications collapsed to 19-year lows. Sears, who I don't know about you guys, but we grew up thinking that the Sears catalog Sears was the Amazon of my childhood. You can get anything out of a Sears catalog, including buying a house. Now, 142 more stores are going to close. That means 142 more anchor tenants in malls are going to go away. How many people worked in those 142 stores? If we were in a Goldilocks economy, this year sounds like a nightmare coming true, does it not?
Yes, it does. Okay, and it is.
It is.
Okay, yes, that's quite correct, Bill.
Bill, federal budget deficit spiked by 17% in 2008, rising to a whopping $779 billion. Where's this money going to come from? Are they just going to keep printing it out of thin air, or is that going to come to an end?
Well, it's two cars or two trains speeding at each other on the same track at each other. The problem is the Federal Reserve is saying that they're going to tighten and lower their balance sheet. So who's going to buy this debt? We know China's not buying the debt. We know Japan's not buying the debt. We know all sovereign nations all over the world are not buying the debt. The only buyer was the Federal Reserve. Sorry about that. That's my dogs in the background. So the problem is who's going to buy the debt? And another very real problem, which nobody even thought about until the last 6 months or so, is that the interest on the debt now is approaching the amount that we pay for our military. Finally, the piper is having to be paid because interest rates are going higher. And interest rates, they continually went lower, and we were able to put more and more debt on the books, but the interest expense never went up because rates went down as fast or faster than we piled on the debt. Now that rates are going up, the piper gets paid.
And in a global sense, not limited.
Yeah, no, this is all over the world, but I mean...
Yeah. Well, hey, the third world took on debt. I told the president of the country that I operated that he was playing with the worst kind of fire possible. And Chinese money has financed Africa and now is foreclosing on countries. And countries don't, you don't tell the Chinese government you're not going to pay them or they can't have their collateral. It doesn't work that way. Otherwise, you end up like Khashoggi on a boardroom table. So China is going to end up with I think, easily 70% of the mineralization in Africa, which we can't operate and rebuild without, especially technologically. It's not a nice picture.
David?
Well, okay, as we move this along, we come to if all these countries have stopped purchasing our debt and the Federal Reserve is selling theirs, who's really buying it?
the Federal Reserve.
It has to be through back channels.
Yeah, backdoor channels and beards. That's the way it happens. It's called debt monetization, but we mustn't use that word because debt monetization equals inflation. And the degree of debt will impact how much debt monetization has to take place. So those that get a big laugh out of our suggestion that hyperinflation is on the threshold simply are unfortunately stupid.
Well, so we can't believe anything they tell us anymore.
Well, we sure can if those figures you were talking about are now national secrets. We're going to have to make assumptions. We've got on JS mindset the debt clock. What are you going to do with the debt clock if the information is skewed or not given at all? Make assumptions.
Yeah, the debt clock is bad enough on its own. Now double the debt clock.
Yeah, well, I'd say at least if it's 21 trillion missing, and yes, it is 21 trillion missing, and somebody has that, or some 21 people have that. Everybody's going wild over the lottery ticket. Hey, that lottery ticket is chicken feed compared to what somebody won for themselves. You know, the lottery now is 1.6 billion. And by the way, don't buy any tickets, guys, because I am going to win next week.
Jim, you've already hit the lotto, and I know what the ticket is.
Yeah, we really have. Okay, that is a true statement. That is a very true statement.
I know what initials are on the lotto ticket. Let's just put it that way.
Well, this is what we face is something that has never existed before. We're just going to see a huge change, and what comes out of this change. I mean, I try to talk to my three daughters and give them a little political re-education. Useless. They left a family that was a little bit to the right of Attila the Hun, and this family, Barbara and Jim Sinclair, sent their kids to socialist education camps where they became totally indoctrinated. Totally. I mean, I made a horrible mistake. My middle daughter knows it, and where her kids are concerned, first they're going to trade school, and then after trade school, they can do anything they want with liberal arts. It's a waste of time. But first trade school, and maybe nothing after that. At least I got one kid who's smart. But still, she's a snowflake. So
you have one snowflake that knows how to weld.
Yeah. Oh, I was just looking at it. I'm trying to clean up the closet. I took in her welder. She got the complete welding outfit stuck in my house. Oh, and she's also taking the FAA examination for commercial drone pilot. And she's already a commercial helicopter pilot. But pretty soon, if you got a drone you play with, it's not. You better not get that thing over 100 feet, or you may not be even able to have it. So I said, hey, there's a skill set. You're a commercial helicopter pilot. How about getting your FAA commercial drone license? Because pretty soon, without that, you won't be able to fly them. While the market for people who can is going to go through the roof. Well, she says, I don't want to be involved in killing people somewhere on the other side of the earth. I said, no, commercially, 10 years from today, that's going to be a hot spot.
Bill,
David.
I'm looking at an article. Expect the U.S. dollar to plunge 40% against the euro. If that was to happen, let's just assume for a second that the article is correct. What would that do to the standard of living of people who did not have gold to protect their wealth? 40%.
It would ruin their standard of living, but I think that article's wrong. The dollar's maybe the dollar plunges 40% versus the euro, but the euro is trash on its own. It's all currencies are going to collapse versus real stuff. That's your definition of hyperinflation.
That percentage of 40 actually does match what I've expected on the USDX for
56
pending drop. but the whole USDX is going to hell at the same time. That's what you just
right.
said, which makes that whole index a waste of time. It measures nothing in that case. If the index is coming apart on the downside, i.e. all currencies are rushing to the bottom, and the dollar falls 40% against all currencies rushing to the bottom, what use is that index? What does it tell you? Well, maybe it tells you that you can speculate against it, but we also know that this credit crunch coming up is going to have an impact on gold and silver, which in turn is going to have an impact on the fractional banking system. So markets that offer a great deal of liquidity will all be sucked into the liquidity vortex or the black hole of the synthetic dollar short. I mean, it is really hellacious what these people are playing with. And the reset is only accelerated by all of this. And I might add there'll be more than one reset.
Well, let's use cryptocurrencies as an example. Right around this time last year, you guys did the interview with Cliff High and Bix Weir. After the interview, they looked like geniuses because in a very short period of time, Bitcoin ran up to 20,000. Well, we're now in the mid-6,000 range. What's that, 70% change? And that's Bitcoin. There's an excellent article out, and it's the most overhyped and useless tech in history, and I've actually sent it in for posting, so all members will get to see this. But I've said this, and I think everybody here is in agreement with this. Cryptocurrencies are nothing. There is nothing there. They can make these things up, and most of your initial coin offerings were complete and absolute scams, just like fiat currencies, which is the point you're making. All currencies are going to go down, and we still may be the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry basket, but if we go down 40% against a basket of currencies and go down 100% against gold or 90% against gold, where does that leave the average citizen? Up the creek?
With no way to feed themselves.
Working as a serf, standing on a bunch of guys on the sidewalk looking for someone to come with a pickup truck to give them hourly work. Third world nation. And while we're looking at third world nation, what do you guys think about the invasion of the southern United States on its way? If 8,000 get in, the next one will be 200,000.
What do you think, David?
I think this is it's verging on insanity. And you almost have to ask yourself, is this happening spontaneously or?
It's not.
Well,
the timing is too perfect. Who's funding these people?
What do you think? Okay, we can leave it at that. I'm sure.
I think it's I don't even know what the word would be, moment. This is a defining moment. I think it's a defining moment. Either they get turned back or they don't.
Well, think of the false flags that could be raised with the families and children, okay? And blame that on the National Guard when, in fact,
blame it on Trump.
Guard. Oh, it will be.
Blame it on the president.
However, what would you do? What could you do? Without borders, you don't have a country, do you? No borders, no country.
Try doing that to Mexico.
Borders are important. Turn them back in Mexico is your only hope, or the National Guard will have to stop them on your border bill and other states. California will probably issue them all an invitation. I mean, this is happening right now, right this moment. And don't think that doesn't have economic implications, not due simply to economics, but also to stabilization and the apparent inability for the corporate CEO to properly run the business of the company known as the United States of America. And its common stock is the U.S. dollar. So this is not a nothing event. because you know the next one is 200,000 or more.
Right.
So unless this is turned back, there is no border. You can start building a wall; it will never be finished in time. So, if you have 30,000 National Guard members with nothing but batons, you're not going to turn them back. They'll run right over the top of them, like they're running over the Mexicans and then federales right now. And look at them. The healthiest people I've ever seen in a group. But the scary part is the families and the children and the false flag concept that we see constantly. If I was one of the kids, I'd turn around and run back where I came from. Now, this is going to be very, very meaningful. How you see, put yourself in his place. You go back to tonight, and you're having dinner, and you're thinking, "What the hell am I going to do?" Because he knows all this. He knows the false flag will come up. He knows it's totally to have an impact on the midterm elections. So that the coup could be finalized. So it is important. I know, David, you don't vote, but maybe if you could think of voting about 7 or 8 times, it would be the same thing. You could cancel it out at, say, 10, 5.
You'd be canceling out a lot of dead people's votes.
Oh, the dead people. Khashoggi's voting, I think, twice.
Did you see here in Texas? They've been caught. Democrats have been caught sending out ballots that are filled out claiming U.S. citizenship and just sending them to non-citizens.
No, you registered to vote here in Connecticut. They got 2 watches. You are a citizen or you aren't a citizen. What the hell is that for? I mean, nobody's going to tick no. Well, you're going to be very important to us, guys. Okay? And all of this will come to a head easily within the next 6 to 8 months so that it would be visible to the dumbest snowflake you got out there.
Go ahead, David.
Okay, well, we're moving on. Let's just, move to gold right now because ultimately that's where everything is going to come to. We can call it negative moat. We can call it truth bombs. Sooner or later, the world's going to wake up and realize that Jim Sinclair, Bill Holter probably are crazy, but they are correct on the fact that gold is going to be the last man standing.
And don't forget, David, you're crazy too.
Well, absolutely.
Crazy is not a problem as long as you know it. Okay, crazy is only a problem if you don't know it.
But gold reserves in Hungary are up 1,000%. Poland's adding to their gold reserves. Russia, China, other central banks. You have, I don't want to say the back door being filled up with gold, but it sure looks that way, doesn't it?
I think maybe the front door too. I mean, it's, when you see other modest-sized governments running for cover of gold, I mean, you have to understand that even the lesser lights in the elite circle of international bankers have gotten the message.
I think you just need to ask the simple one-word question, why? Why are all these nations accumulating gold?
I would say because it's predictable that the pricing mechanism for precious metals held in a sense of camouflage is about to be revealed in the light of truth. And the pricing of gold will move to the physical market. And when it does, it will have an effect on the banking system because the foundation of the fractional banking system is the COMEX, the ability to merchandise all that paper, say 500 ounces on 100 ounces, and not expect it to collapse. People forget that gold and silver have a place in the monetary science. People have forgotten about monetary science. MOP is taken over, and as pointed out by David, it's going negative.
when it goes negative, it's going to be remarkable how it's going to impact the average person, because the average person can't even fathom what the other side of a currency collapse looks like. But if you look at Venezuela, you look at Argentina, you look at any of these other countries, they've already experienced it. And we're still over here making believe that it can't happen here, because if you look at what the average American thinks, they think that debt is good because they're piling it on like it's never been piled on before.
It's patriotic. You know, a 75-inch TV screen is a vote for America.
Well, David, in some instances, debt is being piled on because that's the only way to live. It's forcefully being piled on. It's forcefully being used to eat.
To get gas in your car.
Right.
Well, car sales are a perfect example. If they only sold cars for cash, how many new cars do you think would be sold?
Negative 10.
Instead of 14 million, it'd be less than a million autos.
Yeah, negative. Or close to it. How many times have you seen anybody pay for gas with cash?
How many people pay for iPhones with cash?
Mm-hmm.
And that's only $1,000.
Well, you better order your new $1,000 phone, though, because that flip top you got is really embarrassing. Whenever anybody asks Bill where he buys his telephones, his answer is a delicatessen.
No, actually, I go to Walmart.
Probably.
Hey, I had a flip phone for 6 years. My wife went through like 5 smartphones in that 6 years. I had one flip phone for 6 years. It cost me $9.99 at Walmart. And the only reason I don't still have it, and I mean, I dropped this thing I drop it from my horse. So you're talking, 6-8 feet up in the air. I've dropped it a bunch of times. Still working. The only reason I don't have it is because AT&T shut it off and told me I had to go to the next generation, which I had to buy another flip phone that was compatible.
Well, the flip phone you have, I'm sorry to tell you, is programmed for planned obsolescence. Okay?
I'm sure it is.
It's not a question of getting the nice new fancy one. The thing is, the old one stops working. And these geniuses in California, in Tech Valley, you don't think with the things we've found out lately they've done, don't put their phones out to die in about 1.5 years? Sure they do. That's about what mine dies every time.
Okay, moving on. Another article. This is not an article as much as it is. It's a story. I sent it in for post, so again, it should show up soon. But it's authored by Tom Longo, and it's in reference to the speech that Putin has recently given at the Valdez Economic Forum. And in it, he clearly states that the days of pushing him around are over, and that if it was to ever become a case of Russia failing to exist, that the retaliation would be so brutal, the aggressors would die like dogs, bereft of any chance to ask for salvation. We're in a whole new world. And when I say a whole new world, for the longest time we could dictate to the whole world what they were going to do, and if they didn't do it, we were going to beat them up. It's that simple. It's the economic hitman book in spades. That no longer seems to be the case. The story's out that China has been able to implant chips in all types of devices, including devices that our military uses, including devices that our security agency use. We live in a world now where none of that surprises me. I would expect everything that leaves America has a back door, just like everything that leaves China has a back door, just like everything that leaves Russia has a back door. So we're in a new situation. We're going to have to see where this all plays out, and it's all going to have to do with how America reacts to the up-and-coming nations around us. We've had a great life. For the most part, we've lived on debt since we were kids because we've been off the gold standard for a very long period of time. I don't believe that time is going to continue. I think that time has come to an end. So what we preach every single week is sound money. We try to explain to people that along with sound money, you should own gold mining shares because that's where gold comes from in the end. That being said, we're in a position in time where everybody believes the economy is the best it's been. Yet if you look at what the XAU or the HUI are trading at, the numbers are absolutely, it would be like buying an Apple iPhone for $50. Would it not?
Exactly.
I mean, we're at a particular point in history where people have given up on the only thing of value, and you could look at it as the biggest sale they have ever been presented with. The only thing we could hope is that people take advantage of the sale that's being presented to them at this particular time, because nations are adding to their gold reserves. I would assume citizens of other countries are probably doing likewise. If you look at the statistics here in the United States, just based on where the ETFs are at and the actual amount, the percent ownership of gold shares in the average person's portfolio, it would tell you that you are looking at the buying opportunity that's better than before I even met you, Bill. Would you agree?
I do agree.
I mean, this is the biggest.
That had gold at $270 to $300 an ounce when we met, and I believe that mining equities now are more undervalued to gold than they were then.
You wouldn't honestly believe mining equities don't have anything to do with gold or
Right.
have none.
Right. There's no connection.
I mean, there's over 2,000 smaller companies have left the industry. This is the biggest bear market that has ever existed. From the day somebody figured out they had a whole bunch of claims, 49er, so let's make a little public company out of it. This is the biggest bear market in history in gold equities. You talk about blood in the streets.
Yeah, this is like buying the average industrial stock in 1933.
Yeah, and $1 per cigarette. Okay, there was a clerk, a very smart clerk on the floor that saved all his money and paid $1 for a cigarette and became a very rich man. That, of course, was a very important stock back then. Now we're talking little sewing machines. But then that was high tech.
Speaking of tech, I got a question for you, Dave. How many electronic gadgets do you have in the Dave Cave that have a Chinese chip still in them, or have you dug them all out?
Well, you have to go by the old rule of thumb. Everything is hacked. Everything is hacked.
Even our website.
Well, again, right. You guys were down for quite a while. I stopped sending things in early on to be posted because I saw the backlog setting up. And again, I have my beliefs on what happened to those two ships, just like I have my beliefs at what happened to your website when you covered what happened to those two ships that mysteriously stopped moving and got rammed by, what amounted to barges, for lack of a better word. And we've recently had the incident where a couple of helicopters failed. And, now all of a sudden I want to look at what may or may not have happened that caused these helicopters to stop flying. all technology has its weaknesses. I still like to keep notes on a yellow pad in a file folder. And when I don't want anybody else to see them, I put them in the wood stove. There's no looking it up on the internet. There's no listening to my phone conversation. And you can call me a dinosaur, but I like being a dinosaur because at the end of the day...
Genius.
Well, I don't buy into this whole tech revolution. I have to admit, one, I'm not a geek. I'm all thumbs, but I've never sent a text. I just don't do it. I don't like it. If you want to talk to me, talk to me. I don't like putting my whole life out there. And, we joke about I'm in the witness protection program. No, I'm not. Anybody who wanted to really know who I was could look it up and figure it out. It's just that I don't like to broadcast who I am or what I'm doing. I come from the old school. Keep your head down. Mind your own business. And nobody has to know how much you do or don't have. The people running around in the $100,000 cars and wearing $7,000 watches and $500 pairs of shoes, that doesn't impress me. That's not what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to impress upon people old, proven ways of doing things. And if Trump really wanted to make America great again, and he may want to, he would tell Americans to stop pissing away all their money and start saving their money again, because when we were a nation of savers is when we were great. Because then we didn't have to go begging and borrowing from everybody around the world to fund our deficits.
But there's a problem with that, David. The problem is if you become a saver today, you save in dollars, you're not saving anything.
Well, and again, is that by design? And I believe it is.
Yes, it is.
They want you in the casino, do they not, Jim?
Jim?
We're there.
We live in a casino. Every single day, the Dow Jones is the casino. Every single day, the S&P is the casino. And the minute that casino turns negative and starts a downward spiral, you are going to create a funk in this country like never seen before. Never seen before. The Great Depression will be an understatement, because at least in the Great Depression, people still knew how to feed themselves. A friend of mine who employs many, many engineers, he's one of the lead tech guys in his field. He was telling me a story about a Chinese woman who was saying she's married to an incredibly bright Chinese man. He's a PhD. He's just bright. But she says, do you know what? Chinese men can't even build a fort in the backyard because they didn't grow up doing that. They grew up studying. We talk about being able to take care of yourself, being able to prepare for tomorrow. We've lost a lot of skill sets that were present during the Great Depression, and those skill sets are what kept a lot of people alive and fed. I'm not sure. I don't like to call them snowflakes, because the minute you say that, everybody looks at like, oh, yeah, like you think you're special. No, I don't. But I do know how to take care of myself, and I try to stay in that mindset all the time. And I think that the country would be better off if we pursued that path further, instead of every kid knowing how to work every single app that you could possibly download on your phone, because YouTube went down earlier this week. I mean, so yeah, what are you going to YouTube? What are you going to YouTube and figure out how to do because you never learned to do it? How to plant, when to harvest, how to cut a tree down, Well,
David, a true story. A lot of these, I read this story, 3-4 weeks ago. A lot of these millennials are not getting absentee ballots because they don't know where to go to get a stamp to mail it, or even how to put it in the mail. I mean, just as an example, when the power goes out and the electric can opener doesn't work, how are they going to open a can of beans or whatever?
a cry room is not a bad idea, guys, and a teddy bear is okay. And vanilla ice cream can really make things better.
Well, again, it's all coming to a head at this particular time, is my opinion. I think you guys are in complete agreement with that. That's where the term negative mope is coming from, because we're about to head into negative mope, where one bad day is going to feed on another bad day that's going to feed on another bad day. And I think we're going to see that a lot of what has been going on, be it in the mainstream media or what they call the real world, has all been mope. It's all been make-believe. There is no there. We've lived through a period of cryptocurrencies, something I never thought in my wildest dream people would pay $15,000 for nothing. I mean,
but David, you know why people were paying $15,000-$20,000 for Bitcoin?
Because I thought it was going to go to $1 million.
They told us this last year, because Bitcoin is going to be the only means of performing a transaction on Mars.
That's very important.
And on that note, I think we should probably wrap this up.
Right. No offense to Cliff and no offense to Bix.
No,
but what we said last year,
they're extremely good. They're extremely good. Everybody's welcome to one mistake. Come on. They're good. Both of those guys have been extraordinarily good. I agree with you, David.
Yeah, they just got sucked into a bad idea. Because, again, we've been through a long 8-9 year period. Oh, my God, every single day, the punishment. You know what? When this is all said and done, what you guys have said is going to be true. Gold and silver are going to be the only two things standing here. So, keep that in mind. And there's only one thing. If you can't afford an ounce of gold, I'm sure you could afford a bunch of gold shares that are trading.
Instead.
They're being given away for nothing. Okay.
Well, I could think of juniors that I would buy for under $1.
Oh, good, many.
Correct.
Yeah,
that
many
are
good
valuable,
good people, good property.
So, that being said, I think every week we try to put together a sound money type thing. This is been another one of those, and hopefully people are learning, because it appears the tide is turning.
It is technically market-wise in the old school. Yes, it is.
Well, so hopefully neither one of you guys get cut up by the bandsaw that somehow Saudi Arabia is running around with, because Bill, as we talked about before the call, we believe there's one reason he was cut up into little pieces, and that all comes back to the truth bomb of 9/11.
Exactly.
I agree with you completely, and it was done publicly, so anybody with that knowledge would be a little bit slow in coming forward with it.
You're not in a hurry to come out and tell any 9/11 truths unless you want to see the man with the bandsaw out in your front yard.
Hey, listen, if we have President Pelosi, I'm grabbing my yurt and heading for Mongolia.
Well, I think we are closer to President Nikki Haley than Pelosi, and that's just as scary.
Yeah.
It is just as scary, but it'd be better to be scared by somebody who's cute, not gruesome.
Well, and before we go, we do have to touch on one thing. The Elizabeth Warren story. That actually, this week actually did crack me up. I know Bill had cracked you up, because even the Native American tribes have come out and said, really? Really? But this is how low our politics have sunk in this country. It's a freak show. It's nothing but a freak show. Whether you do or don't like Elizabeth Warren, that was the most insane back and forth that has gone on in a long, long time. And, to come up with a DNA sample that says I'm 1/1000th of something, really? Come on.
Dave, it's the definition of showing people that you don't know that you don't know.
Well,
and coming out of that, the picture of Donald Trump's check for $926 on the $1 million bet.
Priceless.
that was actually good. You guys know I don't do politics, but that did have me chuckling to myself.
That was just wonderful.
So did the big fat Navy SEAL that you guys posted the picture of. You're killing me, guys. You had to get me going political before the end of the day.
It's what we've got. By the way, this stuff of you not being in the witness protection program.
That's a lie.
That's a total fib. Your nose grows. You're gonna get the Pinocchio Award.
Yeah, you got that thing strapped to your ankle.
Yeah, what's that big thing hanging off there for?
Have a good weekend, guys.
All right, guys. Have a good one. That was fun. Talk to you later.
Thank you all very much. I had a wonderful time.